Hello, people of Earth and beyond! My name is Shannon, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Hollow Boy, the third book in the Lockwood Company series by Jonathan Stroud. So this series is basically about children who fight ghosts. Lockwood Company is a ghost hunting agency. Due to the successes they've had in the previous two books, Lockwood Company has claimed a lot more notoriety, and they've been getting a lot busier, and it's becoming hard on the 3 employees that work there. Meanwhile, London is experiencing the worst outbreak yet in Chelsea. I will warn you in advance, no spoilers for The Hollow Boy, but I'm not going to steer away from spoilers for the 2 books that came before it. I have non-spoiler reviews for both The Screaming Staircase and The Whispering Skull, and I will link them in the description. And with all of that preamble out of the way, this review will be separated into 3 parts: the characters, the writing, and the plot. This time I'm going to do something a little bit different because if you watch all of my reviews, it'll probably get really boring if I just say the same thing about the characters each time. So although I do want to focus on Lucy a little bit, this time I'm going to be talking mostly about her relationships with the other characters. First up, let's talk about Lucy and the Skull. You cannot convince me as of this book that the Skull does not care about Lucy. It absolutely cares about her. It may not give a flip about any of the other characters, but it cares about her. Granted, we're not really sure that the Skull is really on her side, so it may have some nefarious purpose in keeping her alive, but there are multiple times when just by choosing to speak, it actually saves her life. Instances like in The Whispering Skull, when Lucy is entranced by the mirror and the Skull speaks, knowing that Lucy is the only one who can hear it, and he gets her out of the trance and also tells her that she needs to smash the mirror. Even if the Skull has some dark purpose in keeping her alive, I don't believe that it actually hates her. There's a moment toward the end of The Hollow Boy where the Skull basically says something along the lines of, "I could tell you right now exactly what I think of you," and it doesn't. The metaphorical door is wide open and the Skull does not go through it. It never actually says anything negative about Lucy. And yes, you could argue that it's just trying not to lose the one contact it has and avoid being buried underground for the rest of eternity, but that particular punishment seems very far from Lucy's mind in this book, and honestly, I think that the Skull goes above and beyond for just trying for those 2 things. Also, it gives her relationship advice, so there's that. Next, let's talk about Lucy and Holly. I don't have much to say except for the fact that usually in literature, when a girl dislikes another girl, it's for a good reason. While Lucy's reasons for disliking Holly are understandable, I won't say they're good. Also, if Jonathan Stroud had taken this new girl upsets the balance trope in the direction that I expected it to go, it would have been pretty cliche, so good on him, I guess. So let's talk about Lucy and Lockwood. Ooh boy. I'll start by saying that I ship Lucy and Lockwood, but they're both pretty young and they need to get themselves figured out before pursuing a relationship. I'll talk about Lucy specifically in a minute, but suffice to say for now that she did not respect Lockwood's privacy at all in this book. I'm honestly impressed by Lockwood's ability to forgive her, but it's understandable that he's not going to give her a second chance if she does what she did again. I've said in the past that Lockwood needs to open up to his teammates and to build that trust with them, and in this book he does. He reveals a little bit about his past, and in that moment Lucy understands why he doesn't talk about it very easily. But then she shoves it aside and does what he asks her not to do. While I understand Lucy's frustration, it has to be Lockwood's choice to open up and to let her in and tell her about his family and everything. She invades his privacy and it's just disrespectful. So let's talk about Lucy Carlyle. This is Heroes of the Valley, another book by Jonathan Stroud. The protagonist, Hallie, is an arrogant pig at the beginning of this book, but by the end, he's redeemed himself. Lucy progresses in the opposite direction. Of the Lockwood Company books so far, it is definitely hardest to like Lucy in this one. She's angry, she's jealous, she's insecure, she makes stupid decisions, and like I just said, she's disrespectful. There are really two things, I think, that keep her from being totally unredeemable and keep me from hating or giving up on her. The first is that she apologizes to Lockwood. She admits what she did and tells him, "You can walk away right now, you can leave me in this sewer, and I will totally deserve it." And you could argue that the decision she makes at the end of this book is an extension of that apology. So it's not as if she didn't learn anything. She is aware of her mistakes and she tries to fix them. The second thing is that she was a pretty likable protagonist in the first two books, so we know what she's like when she's not at her worst. This book is Lucy at her worst. But since we know what she's like when she's at a higher point in her life, there's hope that she'll get better. She's feeling a lot of different emotions throughout the course of this book, and it isn't that any of them are not understandable or aren't reasonable, but the problem is that she lets her emotions endanger herself and others. I want to close out this part by saying that I don't think that Lucy is a bad character or a badly written character, but I don't think that she's the best person in this particular book. And now we move on to the writing. Obligatory appreciation of Jonathan Stroud's mastery of language. And some death imagery for the kiddies. The plot structure in The Hollow Boy is a bit different from the two books that came before it. Pretty early on in The Screaming Staircase and The Whispering Skull, the reader knows what the objective is. In this case, it's over halfway through before the reader actually knows what the end goal is going to be. That's not to say that everything before this does nothing. There is a new character dynamic that's being introduced. There is build up to events later on in the book. There are dropped hints as to what is to come. There is a cohesive flow to this book. Jonathan Stroud takes extra care to make sure that every scene and every decision a character makes means something and adds something to the story, whether it's plot or just character development. Honestly, the variety between books is really good. You could easily pick up The Screaming Staircase and think that every book after it is going to be exactly the same. A formulaic mystery novel about kids fighting ghosts. The Whispering Skull eases the reader into the idea that not every book in this series is going to follow a formula. The Hollow Boy totally derails your expectations. That being said, I did have a slight problem with the parade scene, and I promise I'll keep it vague. It felt slow. It felt like the fight started in slow motion. Now that I can talk in spoilers about The Whispering Skull, let me explain what I mean a little bit. I didn't like the confrontation scene in The Whispering Skull because it felt slow. When Lucy and George actually started fighting Joplin, it felt like the perspective kind of split. We're meant to be keeping up with Bickerstaff's ghost and what Lucy's doing and George and Joplin fighting, and it's all just happening at the same time, and we can't take it all in at the same time. So Lucy keeping track of the ghost and keeping an eye on George just slows the action down. It's like when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and every round of combat lasts 6 seconds, but you've got so many players that going around the table once, it just takes 30 minutes. The parade scene in The Hollow Boy suffers from the same problem. Jonathan Stroud takes the time to say what every single character is doing before Lucy actually jumps into the fray. It's okay to forget about Holly and George and all these other random NPCs for a moment and just focus on what Lucy's doing. Once the camera kind of zooms in on Lockwood and Lucy, it's fine, it's great. But before then, when there's so much going on, that we just can't have it all at the same time, so it's like we're seeing it in slow-mo. But as for the actual climax of this book, I really liked it. It had the vibrancy, the suspense, and the fear factor that I was looking for. There is nothing more truly terrifying than the unknown. And that is going to conclude this non-spoiler review of Lockwood & Company, The Hollow Boy. Thank you so much for watching. What are your thoughts on Lockwood and Jonathan Stroud? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope that you have a lovely day. Live long and prosper.